Hey everybody, like I was saying, I'm going to take you through these study guides just to make sure that we're on the right track with what we're looking for in it. So we'll just kind of do it piece by piece. This Unit 1 study guide is pretty short, so let's just rock through it together. If we're looking at scarcity, we're looking at the fundamental issue of economics, which is the fact that we have limited resources, and sorry for the handwriting in advance, limited resources with unlimited wants and needs. So what this means essentially is that, for any resource, whether it's time or money or space or, copper or oil, all of these are limited in some way or another. But our wants and needs don't know limits, right? So because we have limited oil or because we have limited time or limited money, we have to decide, because of scarcity, how to deal with these resources. And that's what economics is all about. If we're looking at microeconomics, right, and we're looking at individual businesses, it could be the fact that we have a limited amount of time or a limited amount of workers, and we're wanting to make as much product as possible. So it comes down to this fundamental issue of scarcity. Because of scarcity, we have economics. If we're looking at our 4 factors of production, let's remember that we break it up into this acronym CEL. All right, we've got capital, entrepreneurship, land, and labor. All right, these 4 categories go into the production of anything, from a sandwich to a car to a house. The capital goods are the tools that we're using, right? Physical capital for a restaurant would be the oven or the blender or the refrigerator, right? It's a tool that we're using to produce. Human capital would be skills that we're using, right? That if you're looking at a chef, it would be the proper way to cook a steak or the proper way to bake a souffle, right? That would be the human capital. Financial capital is just money. We can use all of these as tools to be more productive. Land, we'll skip entrepreneurship for now, but land is the natural resources, right? That if I produce cars, it would be the aluminum or the iron, those natural resources you could find out in nature. We're going to take those resources and make them into something else. The labor would be the people doing the task, right? I need the engineer or the welder or the electrician, the architect. Those are the people doing the task for the money. And the entrepreneur is the one that brings these together. If I owned a factory making cars, I would have to decide what tools we need or what raw materials I want or what workers to hire. And it would be my money that I'm putting on the line. They're taking that financial risk. So capital goods are the tangible tools that we're using to produce, right? So like I was saying, for this classroom, the webcam that I'm using right now is a capital good. I'm using this to produce something else. The Promethean board that I have in class is a capital good. The laptops, those are all tools that we're using to produce something else, as opposed to a consumer good, which is meant just to be consumed, right? A pizza or a t-shirt, right? We're not producing something else with it. Human capital, like we were talking about, were the skills that we're using to produce, right? If you think about the teachers you've had over the years, it's probably their human capital that sets them apart, how they interact with their kids. Do they go the extra mile or do they just sit at their desks, right? That human capital is skills that we use to produce. Now, those 3 basic economic questions that we're going to keep coming back to over and over again is, what are we going to produce? How are we going to produce it? And who to produce it for? And you could tell a lot about a society based on how they answer these questions, right? If we're looking at the United States, a lot of it comes down to money, right? We produce things, whatever's going to be most profitable for us, whether it makes sense or not, right? Arguably, we need things like medicine and healthcare and homes and cars and phones. Maybe we don't need as many fast food options as we have. We don't need all of these different styles of clothing. But because people are willing to spend the money on them, we produce it. So in the US, we produce whatever's going to make us the most profit, and we're going to produce it in a way that's going to cost us the least. We produce it for the people with the money. But if we look at a command or a centrally planned economy, we do it a little bit differently. In a command or essentially planned economy, it's based on the government and people's needs and wants. So if we're looking at essentially planned economy, there's a couple characteristics we could put here. All right, the factors of production are government owned, right? If we're looking at like North Korea is a good example. The government is their economy. The government dictates what's produced, who's doing what, how much people are getting paid. The government controls these factors of production, the capital, the entrepreneurship, the land, the labor. Generally, there's a focus on people's needs. And we'll say equity, right? If we're looking at what we would call like a communist or socialist society.
Good morning.
One moment, please.
We are happy to announce that breakfast is now set up in the cafeteria. You're welcome to sit and grab it and go, or hang out in the cafeteria and eat. Sorry about the delay.
And you see this during COVID when China repurposed their entire economy for the needs of the people, right? They were, they shut down the economy, they shut down businesses, they quarantined entire cities, which, it has its issues, of course, but that's the focus of a command economy, is that government control, and they're focusing on people's needs and the priorities there, and making sure that there's some level of equity or fairness within society. If we're looking at a free market economy, the biggest characteristic is that there's very little government control, right? That we're letting, we call it the invisible hand of economics. We're letting the invisible hand control what's produced or how it's produced. If people need or want a good, the value of it goes up, which incentivizes businesses to produce more of them. So there's very little government control. There's a focus on economic efficiency and economic freedom. Right, whatever allows us to be the most productive, right? People do best at the things that they like. I love teaching. I want to do a good job at it. I care a lot about you all, and I think that's a big impetus of what makes me a good teacher, or hopefully a good teacher. So that we're focusing on that efficiency, that freedom, and sometimes we struggle with the equity, right? Sometimes we struggle with that fairness, right? We have rich and we have poor, and we have this big gap between them. And so both sides kind of have their own pros and cons. It's not to say that one's better than the other. Moving on to 1.3 here, this production possibilities curve. Again, we use it as a tool to look back at this scarcity, to look back at trade-offs. Now, graphing it out is easy. We've got hats and shoes. We'll put one on the x-axis. We'll put the other on the y-axis. And we'll just graph them out like a set of coordinates. So at point A, we have 0 hats and 30 shoes. So it's 0 hats and 30 shoes. That'll be our point A. Point B, we've got 1 hat, and now I can only produce 29 shoes. So here's the idea of this production possibility curve, right? That as I make more of one good, as I put more workers, more capital, more land resources towards one good, I'm able to make less of the other good, right? Because of scarcity, as I produce more of one, we're going to have less of the other. If I go on to produce 2 hats, well, now I can only produce 25 shoes. And that'll be point C. Point D, I'm making 3 hats, and now I'm only able to produce 15 shoes. And point E, I can produce 4 hats, but I can't make any shoes. Yeah, so that'd be point E there. So what we have here, if we connect these points, is our production possibility curve. It looks at the different possibilities of what we're able to produce, right? I can make all of one, all of another, or some kind of combination thereof, right? And so this production possibility curve can let us do a couple different things. It can let us look at trade-offs. If I produce D, what am I giving up as compared to B? It lets us look at opportunity cost, and it lets us look at efficiency. So let's look at a couple of these. How does the production possibility curve illustrate the idea of scarcity, trade-off, and efficiency? It lets us look at scarcity because we have limited resources, right? If I can make shoes and hats, I've only got so much, let's say, cotton or fiber. I've only got so many workers. I've only got so many tools, right? So because of this scarcity, I can't produce infinite numbers of both of these. I can only produce a limited number of each. Trade-offs tells us that more of one is going to lead to less of another, right? That if I put more workers towards making the hats, that's fewer workers to be producing the shoes. That's fewer tools. That's fewer resources producing the shoes. And this idea of efficiency, if this production possibility curve represents the best that we can do, the best combinations, then anywhere inside of this curve, that kind of takes us down to here, is going to represent underutilization or inefficiency. If I'm only producing 10 shoes and 1 hat, then I know that something's wrong. Maybe my machinery broke down, maybe there was a power outage, maybe there were holidays, whatever. We're not producing as much as we could be. We should be able to produce more shoes and more hats. So anywhere inside of this curve would represent inefficiency. Anywhere on this line would represent what's efficient. So, here would be efficient, or here would be efficient, or here, anywhere on this line represents the best combination of what we're able to produce. Now, if this line, this frontier, represents the most we can produce, then what that would mean is that anywhere outside of this curve is currently impossible, right? It represents, an area that we can't produce given our fixed resources. Something would have to change. We'd have to get more machinery, more workers, better tools, more efficient ways of doing things. All of that could push that curve outwards, but right now, it'd be impossible. All right, it's also asking us to calculate the opportunity cost here of going between these different combinations. So it's asking if we go from point A to point B, what the opportunity cost would be. Going from A to B, I'm gaining 1 hat, but in the process, I'm losing 1 shoe. That would be my opportunity cost. If I'm looking at going from B to C, all right, I'm gaining another hat, but this time I'm losing 4 shoes. So what we see here is an increasing opportunity cost. As I make more of one thing, it becomes increasingly difficult to make the other. If I go from E to D, I'm gaining 15 shoes here, but if I'm producing more shoes, that means I'm going to have to give up some hats. And in this case, I'd be giving up 1 hat. And then finally, going from C to A, I'm gaining 10 shoes, but in the process, I'm going to lose those 2 hats. C, I can make 2 hats. At A, I can't make any, and so I'd be losing those 2 hats there. And it is important when you're doing these PPC questions that you're labeling what it is that you're losing, right? If you just put 2, we don't know if you mean hat or shoes. So it's important to to specialize, or to be specific in what it is that you're looking at. Now, the final part of this first half of this review that I wanted to look at is the difference between a constant opportunity cost and increasing opportunity cost. All right, let's say that I can make bicycles and tricycles, right? Those share the same factors of production. I need wheels, I need handlebars, I need wrenches, I need iron and aluminum. So let's say we're looking at bicycles and we're looking at tricycles. All right, so what we see here, let's say I can make 5 bicycles and 5 trikes, 4 bicycles and 10 trikes, 3 bicycles and 15 trikes, 2 bicycles and 20 trikes, and 1 bicycle and 25 trikes. What we see here is a constant opportunity cost. Every time that I add 5 tricycles, I've got to give up 1 bike. Every time I add 1 bike, I've got to give up 5 tricycles. Going from 1 to 2, opportunity cost is 5 tricycles. 2 to 3, opportunity cost is 5 tricycles. They share the same factors of production, and so that production possibility curve is going to stay constant. Whereas if we're looking at an increasing opportunity cost, like oranges and phones, they don't share the same factors of production. With oranges, I need a lot of land, I need a lot of space and water and farm equipment. With phones, I need factories and machineries and engineers, right? So their opportunity cost isn't going to stay constant, right? So let's say I'm looking at 1 phone, 100 phones, 1,000 phones, 1 million phones. With oranges, I'm looking at 500 oranges, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000. What we're going to see is this production possibility curve is going to be kind of bowed outwards, right? Because as I make more of one thing, it's going to become increasingly difficult to make the other. And we can see that up here with the shoes and the hats, right? The first hat I made, I only lost 1 shoe, right? The second hat I made, I had to give up 4 shoes. The third hat I made, I gave up 10 shoes. And that's why this PPC right here is kind of curved outwards. That as I make more of one good, the opportunity cost is increasing. Going from A to B, I'm losing 1. B to C, I'm losing 4. C to D, I'm losing 10. From D to E, I'm losing 15. So that opportunity cost is growing as I make more and more of that good. And that kind of takes us to 9, the difference between products that have constant opportunity cost and increasing opportunity cost. For the constant opportunity cost, they share the factors of production. right? The best example that I've seen, right, is the pizzas and the calzones. A calzone is just a pizza folded in half, right? They use the same workers, cooks. They use the same machinery, the ovens. They use the same resources, the tomatoes and the dough, right? So by making one more calzone, I'm just giving up that one pizza, right? That opportunity cost is going to stay the same. That increasing opportunity cost, they don't share the factors of production, right? With the oranges and the phones, the more phones I make, I'm going to need to get assembly lines. I'm going to need to get factories. I'm going to need to get, you know, the iron and aluminum and the gold and the platinum that goes in the phones. And it's going to become increasingly difficult to make the oranges because oranges don't use those things. But I'm going to pause it right here, and we'll do this as like a two-part video. See you guys in a second.